So I think I can just go ahead and welcome everybody. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. This is our second town hall to discuss issues of social justice. We have called this town hall tonight Citizen Architect, Actions to Reach Equality and Diversity within the Profession of Architecture. I want to thank you all for coming up tonight. This town hall has been organized by AIALA Los Angeles and SoCal NOMA. And since we have a very intense and interactive 90 minutes ahead, I would like to introduce immediately our moderators, Greg Varabian, President of AIALA Los Angeles, and Lance Collins, President of SoCal NOMA. Gentlemen.
Great. Thanks, Carlo, and thanks for joining me, Lance, again, and thanks for everybody for joining us for this second town hall. To kick things off, Lance and I are going to kind of give you guys some feedback, I guess. We had a series of questions that we posed kind of as a follow-up to the first town hall, and we got quite a bit of responses back. So I think what we're going to just do is take turns, go through a few of them because there's way too many, and then we won't be able to get to the rest of the conversation tonight. But they will be made available, I believe. Correct, Carlo? Those are going to be published or not?
That is correct. Yes, I think so. Right.
Okay, that's what I thought. So that will be published. But I think probably just to get things going, Lance, you want to kick off, and then we'll go back and forth?
Sure. Thank you, Greg. Thank you, everybody. I hope everybody's having a good evening. Thank you to AIALA for, again, putting this joint event together with SoCal NOMA. Great to see all the AIA and NOMA members here. I don't know, whatever, by my count on my screen, we're at about 140 something people so far as people are coming in. So I'm excited to see another big turnout. Hopefully everybody had a really valuable sort of result from our first town hall session about 2 weeks ago. And as Greg mentioned, we had the survey that was sent out following that. And so a number of the responses that we received from the survey, talk about, different actions, different questions that, we should all be thinking about here. So I want to just kind of start with a couple items on my end. One item that came up a lot across a number of respondees was the commitment to an African-American employee mentorship program. That was echoed through a lot of people's responses, and I think certainly building off a lot of the conversations that we had last time. Mentorship at every level from, high school all the way to, a senior professional is really critical for all of our success. We need to keep building on that. Certainly, AIALA and SoCal NOMA have already issued our statements about the chapter's stances on racial injustice and things like that, but we need to certainly make sure all of the member firms declare that they do not support nor will they work with biased and prejudiced clientele. I think a number of firms have already made those initiatives, through their own platforms, and it's been great to see that. So we just need to kind of keep growing that movement. A couple other responses were, the suggestion that offices should include in their plan strategies for ensuring diversity across roles within the organization, including leadership roles. I think most businesses have some sort of strategic planning and visioning that they do for the, the future of their companies, and diversity really needs to become a part of that whole planning process. Another comment was just an acknowledgement by the firms that speaking out against racism and related discussions have a place in the workplace. I think everybody said it to some form or fashion recently about, not being silent anymore. We all have an obligation to speak out about anything that's perceived as racist or biased or anything else. So we want to keep making sure that message comes through loud and clear. Next one is obviously it needs to be more of an effort to hire African Americans in the architecture and design field. I think that we've touched on that a lot, and we're going to certainly talk on that a lot more today. And then more educational resources for white people on what racism is. I thought that was an interesting response. I think, there's still a learning curve for sure, and there's been a lot of documents and other things that have been written recently to that effect about resources. So I think we need to just keep making all those options available to everybody to keep learning, to keep increasing their awareness, and that goes for everybody, sort of, cross chapter wide, across all of the industry. So we all have room to grow in that manner. Greg, I think I'm gonna turn it back to you.
Okay. So the next one was, what key provisions would you like to see included with regards to career advancement and workplace development? So one of them is a call to reevaluate employment practices, recruitment, retention strategies, and governance. That was one of the ones that were answers here. The next one is firms should work to establish a direct internship program and hiring relationship with schools. Another one, a commitment and or system for ensuring proportional representation in firm management and in leadership positions within those firms. So all of these, let's see, there was a couple more here. Let's see, more mentors and leaders of color who have an understanding of what newer people of color employees, I'm just reading how it's written, are experiencing. And then mentoring to help push forward candidates of color, and initiatives to advance African Americans to the role of CEO, partner, or owner of major architecture and design firms. Okay. I think it's, Lance, you want to get the...
Sure. So one of the other questions we talked about was, what provisions regarding policies and regulations that shape the built and natural environment would we like to see included? Number one, promotion of comprehensive community engagement processes, and actively dismantle the existing effects that redlining has on Black people and other minorities, protection in place for parks and neighborhood institutions and housing, and then more sponsorships, internships, and affirmative action when it comes to the inclusion of Black people. These are all kind of highlights. Actually, everybody's responses were much more eloquent than what we're reading here, but I want to make sure I'm trying to cover as much ground as possible. A couple other comments were certainly requiring minority community service as part of the continuing education unit platform, same way we treat ADA or other items. Volunteering in the community as part of paid hours, promoting AIA to advocate for ways to interact with disenfranchised communities, more city leader breakfasts, and more support for community-led commercial development. Those are things that are kind of external to both of our chapters that can really have an impact in the surrounding community.
Mm-hmm. So the next one is, what professional resources would you like to see AIALA make more available to you in the area of human resource and personnel best practices? One of them is promotion of underrepresented groups who are practicing in the profession through lectures, forums, and firm tours. Let's see, the next one says, I believe HR and personnel best practices should include diversity, security, and racism response. Supporting organizations like NOMA, create a diversity committee within AIA and establish programs similar to the NFL's Rooney Rule to encourage diversity. And then guiding staff to respond negatively or racially leaning comments from both fellow employees, clients, and contractors. I think that's what I have here. I think, Lance, you got a couple more.
Yep, I'll read off a few more. So one of the next questions we asked are, what professional resources are needed in the area of mentorship and protege programs? Number one was more minority mentors. So definitely the visibility and increasing, the sort of connections between, younger professionals and students and senior professionals is critical. Partnerships with educations, connecting with HBCUs, encouraging mentorship. Is imperative that aspiring architects be assigned to older, more experienced architects. Suggestion that more Black speakers at AIA events, increased presence in higher education, and more outreach to kids. And then firms should work to establish a direct internship program and hiring relationship with schools.
Okay, and then so the last question we had was what professional resources are needed in the area of contracting, business development, and capacity. One is more outreach to include minority firms, RFPs, community engagement phases, a larger role and percentage for minority firms for project teaming, more resources and opportunities to connect with other minority architects and consultants, access to conferences and members-only groups that require a lot of time and money that many young professionals or others do not have. And then another one was African-American firms need to share in leadership roles in joint venture pursuits. So that's just, obviously it's, maybe 25% of the responses. But again, the rest of them are going to be published. And, I think it's good for you all to sort of read them. And, we'll continue doing this kind of interaction over the next few weeks and months as this thing continues. So maybe just before we break off into the groups that we were talking about earlier, Lance, do you want to just talk about kind of our next goal tonight, our next step?
Sure. So, as Carlo mentioned, sort of the theme for tonight's town hall is revolving around the citizen architect idea, and something that obviously we didn't create, but something that's been covered in a lot of areas. AIA has a citizen architect, features and awards and various things. But I think it's really apt in these times, given not only coronavirus but all the racial injustice and everything else, for us to understand and talk about what are our roles as citizens and as architects, and how can we, sort of be sensitive to all of those sort of facets of our life, and come up with solutions that really we can hopefully take back to us, whether it be at a firm level or at an individual level, and so on and so forth. So, but Greg's going to explain sort of the kind of concept for the night here in a second. But I wanted to just take a second to also remind everybody sort of where we ended off, last session as well. I think in my closing statements last time, I brought up the point that this is a crisis that we are in right now, and we need to start responding as such. And I think we're doing that with the amount of activity that's occurring within the chapter, both chapters at the moment. But by the same token, we also want to make sure that these forums that we create going forward are a safe place for everybody to express how they feel, to ask questions, to share information. And hopefully, as you guys probably heard a lot from the last session, people, I think were, very forthcoming with their opinions and feelings. And I think that was really powerful. So I want to just encourage everybody and remind everybody to do that tonight, so that we move with urgency, but also move in a manner that's purposeful towards coming up with some actions and solutions. And obviously we're looking forward to, learning from everybody. It's not, certainly the format for tonight is not us talking to you, but us listening and learning and sharing information with one another. So I encourage everybody to be, actively participate, and, ask questions, share what you guys are doing within, as individuals in your firms, and then let's kind of continue to, spread the knowledge as wide as we can. So with that, I'm going to give it back to Greg to kind of talk a little bit about the structure.
Right. So when we discussed the idea of the citizen architect in this case, we thought it kind of boiled down into sort of three components. It's the individual, kind of the sort of smallest portion of the conversation. So just starting with the individual, and that basically talks about developing the next generation of architects, starting at an early age, obviously early education and outreach. And And then career development and promoting and hiring. So that's kind of individual. And then the next level was the community or the neighborhood. So focusing on the edges and the spaces between that form neighborhoods. So architects, right, kind of working kind of in the areas that we try to understand. And also maybe providing urban design guidance and support and identify what's missing in these communities and neighborhoods. And then the third one, which is, you know, the sort of highest level of kind of involvement for any organization right now, has to do with on the political or the advocacy is maybe a better word. And it's really kind of activating with politics, you know, the goals that all of us and these kind of breakouts and sessions and future meetings and neighborhood and individual conversations yield, and sort of take it up to kind of the council offices and the supervisor offices with sort of real kind of location-based input, rather than it just being kind of more general statements. Talk about specifics, talk about key areas, talk about individuals and what they're trying to do. So that's how this is broken up. So the number one group is the individual that I mentioned. Number two group is community or neighborhood. And then number three is political outreach and advocacy. And so that's what the numbers were, in case people were wondering. I think on your registration, there was a place to kind of say where you'd like to kind of focus. And then I can't remember, Carlo or Carmen, how long is the breakout session?
I think we're discussing about half an hour to 40 minutes at the very most. We want to be very mindful of the fact that everybody, you know, goes from one Zoom to the other and close this by 7 o'clock, hopefully.
Right. Okay. So why don't we do this? It's, what is it, 5:50? Why don't we just say at 6:30, we'll bring everybody back in, and there's going to be mentors or kind of, I guess we'll call them mentors or moderators for each group. And the goal is that they'll come back and do a read back of the notes they take during these with everybody's input, so that we can create some action items for both organizations, you know, for our next get together. Okay. So Steve, you're going to, I guess, separate us here before you bring us back again.
All right, if we're ready to press the button. Everyone should be rejoining us back in the main room that has not already returned.
I think we are waiting on people returning in, looks like.
I think everyone should be back that was in the breakouts.
Looks like
I see
we're about the same number. Yeah.
Yeah, I see the ticker at the bottom ramping up there. So excellent.
Great. Back, yeah.
Welcome back.
So the idea now is, well, I guess we could start with group one or the moderators of that group to do kind of a read back to the larger body on kind of some maybe next steps, maybe a task list or things to follow up with. So I don't know who wants to tackle that.
Yeah, group one, we had a great conversation regarding increasing individual development for minority designers and architects. One of the we had 4 broad statements and a lot of conversation amongst each of them. One was connecting and fostering relationships between firms and HBCUs. This is regarding acquiring talent. But one of the things that came up with this call to action was a very powerful demand for firms to also to assess their own firm culture, because we've seen many times before designers come through the door, designers of color come to the door and they go right out the door very quickly. And it's this idea that there's been a historic unconscious bias with accepting new diverse hires, but leaving them out to dry. One mistake equals your only chance in this profession. Be open to diverse approaches and make conscious effort to continue to mentor and understand their culture and how that fits within the firm culture. The second thing was a creation of a firm pipelines dedicated to development and acquisition of minority talent. This is the idea that this is the idea of firms tapping into the NOMA project pipeline. We have summer camps, very large architecture and engineering summer camp, where we have students from anywhere from elementary all the way up to high school. And it's this idea that the firms are tapping in and checking in on students that they have taught and mentored as they volunteer in the camp, and following them throughout their process. Now, one of the statements that came out about this was that it should be beyond firms. It could be at the AIA level as well, as this idea of checking in on individuals at every step of the process, helping students from high school get into college. One of the suggestions was for the AIA to have a web page that is dedicated to the processes of getting into college and like what are the next steps, and some type of like similar to the ARE 5.0 handbook, a handbook for individuals who would like to become an architect and get their license. And that should be something that the AIA should put out, and it should be available for free. We talked about Zoom meetings and this accessibility, the ability to be able to check in on high school students, to check in on college students, to check in on individuals that are in their process of gaining their licensure once they exit and graduate. So it's this idea that we're connecting at every level of the project pipeline. There was also reference to many great programs, the ACE program, as well as a after-school program that I hope that the people that offered those suggestions place in the chat. The third was equal and fair pay of all levels, along with a focus on creating platforms to ensure visibility and recognition for minority designers. And one of the things that Gabrielle Bullock brought up is one of the most immediate things that every firm can do is a pay equity analysis. And last but not least is firms to increase focus on proportional representation of designers of color at all levels of leadership. This is kind of goes back to culture, to understand that not everyone wants to be an architect, and kind of being aware of that, reevaluating your individual employees and understanding what is the value that every individual brings to the table. The old idea of putting everyone in a box and saying, okay, are you licensed? Are you not? It should really be about, can you do this set of requirements or can't you? What new things are you bringing to the table in regards to community involvement? What value are bringing this firm? And assess people as opposed to checking the old boxes that we learned from a long time ago. Focusing on each individual skill set and mentoring in that particular area. Flexibility and accommodation of the ability to cultivate new knowledge regarding taking firm resources and applying those hours to individuals, letting them know that they have the ability to go out and volunteer. They have the ability to go out and deal with diversity and inclusion and be able to bill for that. And last but not least, asking your designers what their goals are and what they plan on doing, and do this and have the ability to listen. So that was, tried to get through that as fast as possible. But those were a lot of the calls to actions that we had.
Okay, thanks, Matt. Okay, let's go to group 2. Group 2.
Sorry, I was on mute. I was trying to find Zeba. Where is she still here?
She may be on mute too.
Zeba?
Sorry, I was talking, but I was on mute.
I figure you were. I didn't want to overtalk you. Go for it. Go for it.
Okay, Don, just jump in if I forget anything. I think there were a couple of really good conversation regarding Destination Crenshaw project and what it has brought. A lot of learning about that maybe architects should be thinking about how we can actually expand our services and our involvement beyond just design, beyond just being a architect, and how we can actually make a community project to be successful and be thriving. And in that regard, also, one of the comment was that the project is so successful that it's actually bringing a lot more interest and a lot more life into it, that everybody actually wants the piece of the action. So how can we actually bring similar life and similar opportunities to other communities? There was also a desire to know more about Project Turnkey, the hotels and motels for homeless, whether AIA is involved with that and how we can learn more about it, and whether it's something that architects should be involved with. There were conversations around how architects could be more involved with development, and how, for example, sorry, my notes are all over the place. So as group of architects that we are more involved with development, can we actually think about what community need and be more involved in terms of, you know, examples where about parklets, be more involved in terms of incentives for developers, and how we can actually think about affordability of the projects. One example was that, and it was a great example in terms of low-income housing, that developers actually find low-income housing not to be profitable. So as a result, they really don't go after it. So we need more conversation around that. Conversation about education, that is really, really important, especially when it actually starts with teaching kids what architecture is, and really bringing more awareness and career path for young children. And the fact that there has been examples of that, and we just need more of it. Dawn, maybe you can help me if I missed anything here.
Yeah, so really quick, one of the things we talked about is how do we hold firms accountable for doing this work, and what are the would like to have more discussion of what are the measurable items for making sure, you know, architecture firms engage the community, do volunteer work. What could be something that's put in place to hold these firms accountable? What are the measurements? Someone mentioned something similar. It's called Just City Index of Values, like having that same sort of values for equity and inclusion in neighborhoods, and how can we hold firms accountable for doing these things. And I think, and also just making sure that we are expanding our minds further, just designing the built environment and understanding that these communities or a community are made up of multiple things and aspects. And so just making sure that we are having these discussions with the communities about things like school systems, better grocery stores, that is multifaceted, and it's not just that we have discussions about, design, but we understand the community as a whole.
And then one last point was regarding social justice in terms of defunding police and whether there is a spatial component to that and the relocation of funds to community. That's our report.
Thank you, Dawn and Ziva. The last one, group 3, the political and advocacy.
So we had our conversation went many places. I think there's an overlap with talking about putting more money into communities and how we can advocate for that to happen. How do we create a mandate for change for those things that we want to change? We talked about creating a list of events to which we could show up to lend our voice where we're not usually there. Neighborhood council meetings, local planning meetings, so that we can advocate for things like affordable housing, better open space, projects that include community support. We had a conversation about the repeal of Prop 209 and changes to the procurement process and how that happens and how we can get in front of people who are involved in designing those procurements and changing them so that there's actual access to those projects. And then a sideline to that would be, what could we do to improve access or even gain access to those privately funded projects, because publicly funded projects are not the only game in town. It's really mostly privately funded. So how do we get in front of those people and make sure that they are including us in design of those projects? Janice?
Yeah, thank you. So just to sort of, I guess, tie a bow on all of this for the time being, it's a few of the really important points that came out of our discussion was, just really tapping into this sense of urgency and, this level of intensity that we need to maintain with all of these initiatives and these efforts that we're trying to go after. Just as quickly as we were able to mobilize and respond to a global pandemic, how do we maintain that same level of momentum to, really tackle these issues? And another valid point that came up was really, about mobilizing and developing a list of specific asks that we can take to, these planning departments and these city councils, and making sure that we are attacking it from all different sides. And so one thing that I would continue to sort of push and challenge all of you all here tonight is, this takes a lot of effort, and showing up to the call is definitely a huge first step. And I am appreciative of it. And I'm glad to see all of these faces out here. But the reality is, when the hype dies down and when we get all bogged down with our projects and our day-to-day tasks and our, responsibilities, it falls to the wayside. So the level of commitment and the level of dedication that it's going to take from each of you here to join our committees and our advocacy groups in NOMA and in AIA, it's going to be so crucial, because we need the power behind this effort. We need the power behind this initiative. And so I really want to, continue to emphasize the importance of, putting in the work, because it's not easy. I am one to tell you, I am tired all the time. So, and I know you all can relate, because our jobs are very demanding, and this is outside of our, our normal day-to-day job responsibilities. So we all understand that, but the effort is definitely needed, and we have to continue to uplift one another and hold each other accountable and push forward. So we need the level of involvement at NOMA and at AIALA on these advocacy levels so that we can continue these efforts and push forward in a strong way.
Can I just also add something? My sense from the conversation we had in that group, and I don't know, Lance, if you heard anything else, was I also think there's a lot of folks that just don't understand some of the process or some of the ways that they can get involved kind of at the most basic grassroots level in the communities or organizations or clubs or, you know, our groups, all the way up into kind of the planning departments, the council offices, the supervisors' offices, and their planning deputies. And so there's a lot of layers, as some of us know who've been involved with projects that are in the public eye, maybe. I would just say with that is if you are interested or do want to learn, and I don't want to fill this whole night with you know, emails to Will Wright, but he can at least connect you with certain groups in the AIALA office or in our organization. I'm sure SoCal NOMA has the same setup. And by just going and being part of one of the outreach events or one of the political action committee events or one of the advocacy events at City Hall, you will start to learn the process by going out and doing it. It's a little bit picking up on what Janice said. You do have to get involved with it and just jump into it, because it's really not, it's hard, it's a lot of work, but it's not painful once you've tried it. It actually feels pretty good because there are folks that listen. So you just got to find them. Anyway, that would be my recommendation, and to those of you that don't understand perhaps the process of development and planning in our city.
And I'll just add to that. I think that's obviously a critical point. I'll just add, I think we had one member in our group that talked about, who was not an architect representing the community, which was about just how to getting better connected to community members. And to everybody, I would encourage all of us to be more visible, because as much as we all say, how can we help and how can we advocate, there's a whole, slew of counterparts on the other side saying, I don't know who to talk to about these issues. So, there's a divide there still that we need to do a better job at. There's people who are fighting these fights every single day in communities, all around Southern California and beyond. So the more visible we can make ourselves, so they know to reach out to us as resources, and we know who to reach out to for resources on our end, I think the stronger we'll be. We all don't have to reinvent the wheel, each of us, and try to solve this problem all by ourselves. And so the visibility and the sort of connections to the existing community organizations is, I think, really important for all of us to remember.
Right. If there's a project you're part of that you think is a great example of demonstrating kind of equity and inclusionary development and housing practices that need support, bring it to the AIA, and we obviously will look at this and support it and be there to support it, in those planning hearings. Someone made a recommendation in our chat box. It didn't get read out, but just now, but I thought that was a really good example. Is if we know about it, the AIA can come and do some supportive emails and to our membership and to get attention to those projects, which are, I think, excelling in that sort of environment. I think that's it. I know, Lance, you wanted to just add one last piece to close out the night here.
Yeah, I mean, number one, I want to say thank you guys all first and foremost for participating in all this town hall, and hopefully you guys got a chance to share information and learn, from our colleagues and ask questions and all those sorts of things. Again, kind of going back to where I started the night, we want these forums to be a place where everybody can share resources and knowledge and also be safe enough for people to ask questions where things they don't know or they want to do a better job at and all those sorts of things. This has been our second town hall, but this is certainly not the end or even, the middle of this process. We're still really in the beginning of this process. We want this to be an ongoing conversation between AIALA, SoCal NOMA, and any other organizations that want to kind of partner with us going forward. I think we're going to do something relative to ULI here in the near future. So, you know, this is, again, sort of the beginning of these conversations, and these are going to all continue. You know, both AIALA and SoCal NOMA meet on a regular basis. We're going to continue to make, you know, social justice part of sort of the conversation as we go forward here in our monthly sessions. And there's going to be, you know, look out for a number of other announcements for upcoming events going forward here. You know, we've talked about the idea of establishing a task force of people who really want to drill down on some of these items at a deeper level. Obviously, you know, all the things that were talked about tonight, you could spend 2 hours on just each one item on its own. So I think putting together a task force will be, you know, a good next step to address issues of Prop 209 specifically, or community engagement specifically, or, you know, what have you going forward. So look out for that. I think I'm going to piggyback and say, please keep emailing Will about all those things so that he'll get 1,000 emails about this. But I think between Will and our SoCal NOMA team, we'll kind of shepherd the assemblage of that task force going forward. And then, of course, I'm gonna speak a little bit for Carmen and others, but certainly the AIA Encompass conference is coming up in the fall. Carmen or Ziba, I don't know if you want to say any more details about that right now, or save the date or whatever. I think Ziba, you're on mute.
You're muted.
I was saying that just be on the lookout. We have a really great program that we are planning for this year that is going to be a lot different, a lot more involved, and we're covering equity, diversity, and inclusion in 2 days. So just be on the lookout.
Excellent. Thank you. And then I think the last thing I kind of really want to talk about is, you know, all the virtual town halls, all the different meetings, all these things are great, and it's really important. It's been really, I guess, invigorating to me for everybody to get a chance to express themselves. And, you know, last session, you know, a lot of raw emotions were expressed. Today, I think we talked a lot more about actions and solutions and strategies. But, you know, we are, as I said before, we are, I'm going to treat this like we're in a crisis. And so it's important that we move this into actionable steps and really start to hold people accountable for what we're doing as far as results, what people are committing to going forward, and then, and be transparent with everything. So to that end, I want to announce a new initiative from SoCal NOMA that we're going to be rolling out here in the near future here. But I'm going to kind of give you guys the advanced preview tonight. You know, we took the idea of, you guys are probably all familiar with the Architecture 2030 Challenge, right? And, you know, that challenge exists as a, you know, platform for architects to sign up for and to be transparent about their commitment to fighting climate change and greenhouse gas emissions and things of that nature. So we took that idea and kind of discussed, how do we create a challenge, a commitment that architecture, engineering, construction firms can sign up for and pledge their commitment to diversity, equity, inclusion in a transparent and measurable manner. And so first and foremost, I'm going to give big credit to Perkins and Will, because they really kind of led the effort with Gabrielle and Drake and others, sort of inspiring a lot of the items here. But SoCal NOMA, we're going to roll this out as a pilot program here in the Southern California area initially, hopefully starting the next week or two, I think, and then rolling out to the national level after that. So I'm just going to read to you a document that we've prepared outlining what this challenge is and what that would mean. And then I would certainly ask anybody who's interested in participating in this as a firm to contact me directly, and we can kind of go through more of the details. And like I said, it will launch here hopefully the next week or so. So I'm just going to read what I've wrote here. So the SoCal NOMA Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Challenge is designed to commit architecture and engineering firms to support the following initiatives to transform the diversity of their firms and the practice of architecture in a way that is holistic, firm-wide, and data-driven. By prioritizing metrics, accountability, and actionable responses, participating firms can more easily work toward creating a professional environment and a built environment that supports racial justice, social responsibility, diversity, equity, inclusion. SoCal NOMA is asking you to pledge through the following actions on an ongoing basis. And so it would essentially read as, we, insert your architecture firm name here, in support of promoting diversity, equity, inclusion in the profession of architecture, pledge to take the following actions. Number one, join SoCal NOMA as a chapter partner to support all of the chapter initiatives. Number two, conduct an annual company-wide diversity survey addressing ethnicity, gender, and age, with results reported to SoCal NOMA and the AIALA. Report annual diversity statistics of firm, including all staff, design professionals, and leadership. Number three, conduct at least one annual diversity training for all staff at the firm. Number four, provide at least one internship per year for architecture students from historically Black design schools or from Black or underrepresented people of color from local architectural schools in Southern California. Number five, increase recruitment of Black and underrepresented people of color for design staff and total number of professionals at the firm. Number six, develop a mentorship program within the firm to connect and support African American and underrepresented people of color in their career development within the profession. Number seven, increase promotions of Black and underrepresented people of color to leadership positions. Number eight, create project teams that include at least one Black-owned or underrepresented persons of color-owned businesses in a prime, partner, or sub-consultant role. Number nine, partner with at least one Black or underrepresented persons of color-owned architecture firm per year on a project. And number 10, provide pro bono design services and hands-on contribution to underserved communities by partnering up with local grassroots organizations on at least one project per year. So that's the framework, these 10 points that we want hopefully all firms to pledge their support for. And that pledge, we hope, will be something that NOMA can support firms in achieving. It's not that everybody has to hit everything on day one, but that we can grow together to start to track the metrics, start to evaluate performance, and start to report back on how everybody's doing and provide additional resources to firms as needed to help them be more successful, whether it's, providing resources for hiring of staff or conducting training or what firms to partner up with or what organizations to partner up with. All these things, we want to make sure it's a two-way street as a platform where we can support all of the firms in Southern California in improving on their diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we hope that all the firms will sign up for that challenge. If you are on this, on the Zoom meeting, if you're a firm leader, please reach out to me directly, president@socalnoma.org. I'd be happy to talk with you more about that as we get ready to launch this here in the near future. If you work for a firm, please talk with your leadership about this and see, is this something that your firm can participate in? Because I think when we get a critical mass of firms in the Southern California area to participate in this, we're going to have some really outstanding results. I'm a firm believer that with the transparency and the accountability of a program like this, we can really sort of raise the tide for all of us across our whole industry here. And, as I mentioned, with Southern California, we're going to be piloting this program. And I think we have a chance here in the LA area to really be a leader nationwide and hopefully worldwide, showing how we want to put actionable results behind all of these conversations we're doing. So again, we hope we're going to be launching this within the next week or so. It'll be on our SoCal NOMA website in the near future. Please email me directly if you want to know more about it, if you're interested in signing up for it with your firm. And we look forward to partnering with all of you and supporting all of the firms as they go forward and in making improvements across the whole board. So that's where I'm going to leave it for tonight. I'm going to say thank you again to everybody, and certainly thank you to AIALA and everybody for putting the event together. And I really enjoy talking with everybody and listening and learning everybody's perspectives. And I think I'm always encouraged by, everybody's energy, hopefully going in the right direction here. So thank you guys all for that.